So I'll be very brief, but before I give the presentation, just mention two things. One, this is not my PhD thesis, but it is one of the thoughts that came to me after my PhD, and majorly because I got to learn about GoGN quite late. I was struggling with something, and Stan, he did data literacy, and I was researching on research data management. So when I reached out, he told me, yeah, one of the organizations that really sorted me out was GoGN. I was at the tail end, but then when I finished, I kept thinking, how do I then reorganize my research output with the whole space of open science, open educational resources, and the likes. And to me, the second thing that really made me think of this is we are in the age now of AI. And as I'll explain, AI is here to stay. And it is now us in the open education space to see how to use it to our advantage. My name is Joel Nakitare. I'm a librarian by profession at Rongo University, and GoGN alumni and part of the COEC hub in Kenya. So the agenda for my presentation, just to appreciate the context that we are in, why open data in conversation of open education resources, a bit of reflection of how we travel on open education resources, then AI, looking together with open data and the open education resources, and then just borrowing from my thesis, the data landscape, how does it look like and how do we use it to advantage? And then the call to action for all of us as we go back to our countries, what exactly we need to look at. So just to appreciate, when you talk about open data, it's not something new. Actually, earlier when we were talking about open education resources, many a times I would refer to open data because it borrows the principles of sharing, reuse, and the likes. But again, it is a good time for us to now just to reflect on it vis-a-vis how this space has changed. Earlier, most resources were in the paid-up worlds. But now we are seeing a lot of increase in Creative Commons license, the rise of MOOCs, the platforms, and the likes. A key thing, our key change is that AI in education. Everywhere, one of the presenters in the morning mentioned that this space, we've not talked about AI, like almost all conferences you go to now, everybody's AI. But again, as a movement, we want to look at a future where this education is a public good for all of us. Now, how do we achieve that? Now, in my presentation, I'm arguing that AI and open data are, how do you call the conjoined twins? Huh? Why? Because for us to be able, for AI to be able to create good quality open education resources, it needs quality and adequate data. Quality and adequate. If we can achieve the two, many organizations can be able then to, even in your specific context, to use AI to quickly assist the process of creating and sharing information. Now, then I've identified a number of areas we can use AI. I've already mentioned about creating, translation, accessibility, adaptability, and the likes. But I want to move, I'm moving a bit faster because of time. But in this slide, it's just to summarize the thought that if we reach a level where there was enough clean, good quality data, then we can be able to leverage or to deploy AI in almost all levels of education. But that is lacking. And just borrowing from the thesis, my thesis, the data that we have is very fragmented in our Okay. Allow me to go through this slide for the landscape for the data. So the data that we are having in our universities, one, it is limited, almost in individual machines, and that is the Kenyan context. All the researchers I talked to, majority of them have data fragmented in different places. There was no single university in Kenya that has an data repository, at least the ones I talked to, even though we have a few research institutions with data repositories. Then the policy, there was only one university which had a policy, a draft policy on data management. So that is the landscape we are talking about. Now, what that one means, of course, the other things, there was limited infrastructure. No, the ICT was weak, repositories were lacking, there were no data stewards, and then there was no standard basically in the country. Now, what that one means is that we don't have data that can tell the story in the local context. We can't use AI. And if we use AI in our context, it propagates inequality because we are generating content using a different data set. So my thinking, my focus in research now is to try and see how do we then use or put in place strategies that can ensure that we have open data repositories, at least in our universities, in the local context, so that then if we went to the next level of deploying AI, we are able to use the local context or local data sets to be able to generate open education resources. And if we don't do that, then we are likely to still propagate the issue of inequalities. So a few of the areas that as we go home, we can think about, how do we then advocate for policies that will push for open data in our organization? How do we become champions? How do we build infrastructure? How do we foster partnerships, at least as hubs, as members of GOGIEN? And last but not least, how do we develop standards that can then be able to be used in different contexts? Thank you very much.